and welcome back to Squirrel Garage. On this episode, we are going to dive into the E36 starter on the red one. As I was leaving final formation two Sundays ago, the car would not start. Well, after some digging and some figuring out, turns out the car was in immobility mode when the door was locked from the inside. It wouldn't allow the driver's side door to open or the car to start. So, after messing around with the car a little bit, the car door opens, car starts, everything works. So, the red one is actually good to go. It's all done, all set up. We're going to do some changes to the little delete panel on the left side to incorporate the new coolant tank and everything, but other than that, she ran fine, no overheating issues, ran perfectly good. Other than the starter, but we got that fixed. So most likely we will be working on the white one this episode, so we'll be pulling the intake manifold on that, getting that coolant pipe replaced, putting the bumper back on that one, getting everything buttoned up, and hopefully with the coolant pipe changed out, put some new coolant in it, take it around the block a couple times, make sure everything's good, and really get that one going. Mod Bargains is still dragging their feet on my H&R springs for that car, so we're into week number 4 now on a part that they said they had in stock, and I'm still waiting on. The shipping number they gave me shows that they shipped it to somebody in California. So, I don't know what's going on with them. But as soon as we get those springs, we'll get them on that car, get it down, and get that one starting to rock and roll. If we do get some time on this one, I might put the RTD shifter in. I have pretty much everything to do that. We do the Guibo at the same time. But we'll see how far we get this episode. It might just be taking off the intake manifold and replacing the coolant pipe on the white one. But if we do get a little extra time this week, might get it done. So we'll see. Stay tuned, and we're going to start working on the white one here in a minute. As you can see, guys, the white one's in the garage now. Swap places with the red one. It's in the garage so we can work and actually get some work done on it in the garage instead of out in the driveway. Makes it so much easier to work on. We will be taking apart the intake manifold. What else is there? Injectors, fuel rail, intake, windshield wiper cowl. What else we'll take out? We're going to loop that stupid throttle body heater. We're going to loop that sucker back on itself and get rid of that crap. Pull all the ICV or CCV or whatever you want to call it. Also, we can get to that back coolant hose so we can pop that off and put a brand new one on. I ordered that off of Amazon. Should be here tomorrow. I think it arrives the same day the springs do for this, so if all that arrives tomorrow and we get all this intake manifold off and everything, we might have a running driving car on, ready to go. So, let's jump to it, get this one ready and set and ready to go. So, let's do it. So, some things we're going to start by removing the intake. This is just a cheap little hot air intake I have. So we'll start by removing that. As we go through this, I have blue painter's tape, and what I usually do is every connection that I take off, or hose that I take off, or anything, I mark it and I write it down on a list on the side as I take it off so that when I go back to install everything, install the intake manifold, I I actually follow my list, and it makes it easy to make sure I have everything connected. Because if you get one thing disconnected on this, say a vacuum hose, or it's backwards, it won't make the car idle. This car loves vacuum hoses and it loves being under vacuum. So as we go through that, you'll see me tape it off and I'll mark everything. But let's go ahead and get all the rest of this intake off. See this boot? You can see already has holes all in it. Needs to be replaced. This thing is just bad. It that'll cause intake leaks. That'll cause all of that. We also on the bottom, which also just fell apart, is on the bottom here you have this nice little elbow that goes into your vacuum hose on the bottom, which I'm looking at right here, and this thing is cracked to high heavens. So that will all need to be replaced, except for the MAF, of course. So now we got that out of the way. This is your MAF connection. You don't really need to mark that off because that's literally one only connection like that. But we'll get the throttle body connection and then the traction control connection. This will take off all as one, and we'll set up here off to the side. Because it has so much stuff on it, we don't want to really mess with that right now. But let's go ahead and get that off. Now that we have that removed, I have it set off to the side right here. We're going to have this rubber gasket in between. Usually I would say replace it, but this one looks fairly new-ish. So I'll just shove that one back in there so we don't lose it. And I will go ahead and start taking off the 4 bolts for the throttle body. Those will be, I believe those are 10mm bolts, but we'll see here. Let's get that off. Now that we got those 4 bolts disconnected, you can see the throttle body just falls off to the side. Here is the throttle body gasket, which I've ordered a new one too. This one's always just good measure to replace, regardless of what you're doing. Once you take it off, I always replace these. They're like a $5 part, and it makes for cheap insurance that this doesn't leak. But we have that off, and you can see here, I don't know, I might have to bring you guys in closer. Hang on. If you see here, we have these 2 coolant pipes that go to the throttle body. Well, those are beautiful throttle body warmer lines. So, if we're in deep Siberian winter, you can easily heat your throttle body, which, living in Texas, we do not need that at all. So what we end up doing is, it's a hard pipe right here, and this hose is rubber hose. Take this, take that line off, flip it up, just loop it up and over, connect it, and then you never have to worry about it again. I'll bring you back out. So we'll do that when the time comes. Might do that now just to get that shit out of the way. If you want to, you can take the whole throttle body off by disconnecting the little lines over here. Those pop off. You can fold this whole thing out of the way. But for right now, we're going to lean it that way. And we'll start getting to all the crap underneath this, which is a whole bunch of 10mm back here that hold the dipstick on. All these 10mm down here that hold like the ICV on, and all your vacuum lines. It's just a laundry list of stuff underneath this intake manifold. What I do is, as I take them off, I put them in this magnetic holder, And then what I'll do is as I fill up, like with the throttle body, I'll put these in a little Ziploc baggie and just tie them off and write throttle body or intake manifold or ICV, so when you're reassembling you're not trying to guesstimate which bolts go where, because there's going to be a few of them in here. I'm going to go get some baggies so I can put those in so we can start pulling all those bolts off. So next, let's take off the... oh, shoot. I sound horrible. Next, let's take off the ICV, which is 3 bolts. All, again, still 10 millimeter under here. But that will get the ICV off. Oh, we don't need the extension. And we can go about that way. Also, I should have mentioned I disconnected the battery prior to starting all this work. Was it 4? Is 4 on this? 4. Prior to starting work so that we don't, fry ourselves messing with anything. So, battery's disconnected. And all of that good stuff. But we'll get the ICV off. I need to probably clean it anyways and check all the hoses on it as well. I just did a Jorge's CCV ICV thing, and he ended up having to buy a whole new one because it was, even with the one I replaced it still didn't do what it was supposed to. So probably good to do all this stuff all at once. Take this front hose clip off and we'll pull the ICV out. Well, for now I'm going to leave the ICV under there. I'm having the same problem as I did with Jorge's car. The hose that drains from the bottom of the CCV to the dipstick is just completely dry rotted and has just stuck to the to both ends and won't come off regardless of what you do. Had to cut his off too and do a new pipe, new hose I mean. So I'll probably end up doing the same thing with this one, but for now I can't get it off. I might get it off once I pull the intake manifold off, but for now it's pushed down and out of the way, so it shouldn't be an issue. Let's go ahead and continue removing the 3 bolts back here for the oil dipstick and the intake manifold to the bottom of the bracket. So let's pull that stuff off. Well, I did what I said I wasn't going to do, and I removed the throttle body. After looking at it, it's really, really dirty. So I'm going to go ahead and clean it all up, shine it up, and get it out of the way and stuff. So we'll, that just involved taking off these 2 coolant hoses and the throttle cables, which really wasn't that hard. Also gives us a little bit more area to work in under here. So now that we have that dipstick out of the way and we have this bracket off, all we have left to do is a few connections under here, electrical connections, which you'll mark so that we know where they go. And then removing this breather hose. No, that breather hose stays with that. I forgot about that. I get the S50 and the S52 mixed up. All of that stuff under here stays connected, except for this one vent hose here. We'll pull that one off, and then we have a few more hoses up underneath that we're going to have to disconnect. But once all that's done, then we can start pulling this fuel rail and everything. And there's two ways we're going to go about this for the fuel rail. You can either take the fuel rail off with the injectors and everything, and then disconnect your hoses in the back, pull it off, and then pull your intake manifold. Or you can disconnect the hoses and pull the intake manifold and this all at the same time. Either way it works. I like taking the fuel rail off and kind of laying it up to the side. It gives me more than enough room to work, so most likely that's what we'll do when the time comes. So let's get the rest of this stuff disconnected and get this thing ready to come out. So we pulled off the, I guess this is the idle control valve, and it looks pretty clean, and it makes its noise, which you hear that noise, then it's good. But I'm still going to spray some sea foam into it and let it sit while we work on the car. Clean it all out, make sure it's all good to go. But you can see this is the hose that goes to the bottom of the intake, and you can see that it's ripped right there. See, it's ripped. So we'll replace that too, because that'll leak air. Even though that's got a clamp on it, it'll still leak air there. So throw this in the bin of parts to be reused. So now that that's out, we have a vacuum line under here. Actually, two vacuum lines under here. Get those disconnected. They just push on. They don't have a clamp or anything. And then this electrical connection here. And once we get that one off, this whole thing should be ready to jump over to the other side and take care of all that on that side, which is the intake manifold bolts, fuel rail, etc., 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 all that crap. Why is this clip coming off? Let's see. There it goes. Came right off. Throw that off to the side, mark it, and we'll keep moving on. That hose is there. All these, what's that vacuum line? What is it? That vacuum line wasn't even connected to anything, so we'll have to figure out where that one goes before we reassemble. But it looks to be that everything on the intake manifold side is off. So everything on the intake throttle side has been disconnected. Except for this vent hose up top, but that vent hose for this thing, for the intake manifold, just pops off. Just pushes off, pop, flip it up, and you're good to go on that. So, now that we have that off, let's move over to the fuel rail and see what we need to take off. So guys, I got the fuel rail up and out of the way, clipped off. For right now, that's going to be our easiest thing to do, so we can jump on these intake manifold bolts. Once we get to the back, it'll be a little bit hairy, but shouldn't be anything an extension can't solve. But I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 of them. I'm missing one up front, so it's only 7 for me, but there'll be 8 or so. Take all those off. They're 10 millimeter as well. No, they're not. I lie to you. I lie. They're not 10s. They're not 10s. They're something else. Let's see. What are they? 12s? I don't know what they are. Can't remember. Thought they were 10s. Let's see if they're 12s. if there are 12. 12. Actually, I think there are 11, but let's see if the 12 will break it loose. Yeah, that'll break it loose. That'll be fine. But I think it's an actual 11, but we'll break them all loose. That'll be fine. And then we'll take out the intake manifold. Okay, I've gotten all the intake manifold bolts off. So let's see if we can't wiggle this thing off and loose and out of here without having to fuck with too much shit. I don't know, I thought we didn't have to remove that ECU thing. So let's see if we can pull this thing out here. Boom! Pow! It's off. I had new gaskets coming for this. We'll clean this baby up. This thing looks dirty. Oh my god, it's caked with a bunch of shit. That thing is a dirty intake manifold. I also have a spare one, S52, that I've already cleaned, which I might just throw in. But the intake manifold is off. As you can see, there's a bunch of coolant lines. Not too much stuff. You know, everything's kind of zip tied out of the way. And there is our culprit. Here, let me take you guys off this real quick and pan you over here and show you our culprit. Broken coolant pipe right there, baby. Right there. Thing's broken. That's what we need to get to, and that's what we're going to replace. So hopefully after we do that, this thing will be good to go. Take a look down on those valves. They look dirty as hell too, but a good seafoaming, good cleaning, I think this thing will be good to go. Well guys, we got the bad coolant hose out, and as you can see, it's got the nice giant hole in the back side of it. So now that we have that out, we can throw that away because that's useless to us now. The new hose should be here tomorrow. Dirt on my face. Should be here tomorrow, along with a couple other coolant hoses that I'm going to replace back there as well. But I believe that is going to be it for this video. Unless all my parts come in like tomorrow, first thing, then we'll have a video putting everything back together and getting this thing back on the road. But if not, and my parts don't come in tomorrow, I think the springs come in tomorrow. If the springs come in tomorrow, we might change focus and do the springs on this instead of the coolant pipe. If the coolant pipe doesn't come tomorrow, if the coolant pipe comes tomorrow, we'll do all this, get this all back together, and then do springs in the second video. If not, who knows? It's all up in the air. All depends on what gets in for shipping and what actually arrives at the house. That will determine the end of this video. This might be it. This might not be. But if it is the end of the video, subscribe below, like the video, and there's a lot more E36 stuff to come. You know, Squirrel Garage is going to go nuts on this car. So, we'll see what happens. See you guys.